It's up! Drop it. What is this? A surprise power panel in studio on a Tuesday. Cenk, Uygur, and Kasparian, the legendary Emma Vigeland from the Majority Report. How you doing, sister?
I'm doing all right. I was out west for a bachelorette party. Figured I'd extend my trip one extra day to hang out with you guys. So
I mean, and you're about to have the best time. Certainly better than the time you had with Damage Report this morning.
Oh, I mean, I had to hang out with John. So
come on, who wants that?
Speaks for itself.
A little too early in the morning for pie.
I agree.
Okay, so all right, it's great to have you in town. Yeah. Wonderful to have you on the panel. Let's discuss many things, including today.
Pretty explosive stories.
Yes, Rudy Giuliani and his sex scandals, Trump and the pardons. We'll see about that. Biden came in 18 different directions. And people are surprised, very surprised that Biden turns out to be a Republican. Not at all surprised. Well, we'll talk more about that in a second. But Casper, get us started, if you will.
Well, we begin with the most explosive story of the day, and that's a new lawsuit that's been filed against Rudy Giuliani.
The wide-ranging lawsuit against Rudy Giuliani was filed in a New York court Monday. In it, plaintiff Noelle Dunphy claims Giuliani offered her a job in January 2019 as his director of business development with a salary of $1 million a year, but said he'd have to defer her pay and keep her employment secret until he finished divorce proceedings with his now ex-wife.
Trash. Now, Noelle Dunphy, who is a former employee of Rudy Giuliani's, is alleging some pretty explosive claims in a new $10 million lawsuit that was filed this week on Monday. There are a lot of details to unpack, some having to do with potential federal crimes, many having to do with sexual harassment and sexual assault. So let's take a look at the next video because it details some of the allegations, and then we'll talk about the corroborating evidence Noelle Dunphy claims to have in this case. Let's watch.
Over the nearly 2 years that followed, Dunphy claims Giuliani paid her almost exclusively in cash, made clear that satisfying his sexual demands was an absolute requirement of her employment, forced her to perform a variety of sexual acts, and breached their alleged business agreement. Dunphy claims to have recorded many of her interactions with Giuliani, including one where she says he told her, "I've wanted you from the day I interviewed you." Attorney Justin Kelton represents her.
She alleges that on several occasions she objected clearly, that he did not respect those objections.
The lawsuit also alleges Giuliani, a personal attorney to then President Trump, told Dunphy Trump's team would claim there was voter fraud if he lost the 2020 election. In another instance, Giuliani allegedly said he was selling pardons for $2 million, which he and President Trump would split.
Now remember, Donald Trump pardoned many right-wingers who had been convicted of various crimes, even individuals who hadn't been convicted yet but were expecting to face trial for their alleged crimes. And I'm very curious to see how this plays out because the allegation that they were selling pardons for $2 million is a very big deal. And when it comes to the accusations of sexual assault, one of the specific claims was that Rudy Giuliani forced Noelle Dunphy to perform oral sex. He basically dragged her head toward his crotch and did exactly that, according to the allegation. So there's a lot more to get to, and I want to kind of parse out what kind of evidence there is, what they have cited in terms of the types of recordings that she has in the lawsuit. We'll do that in a moment, but first I want to open it up to the panel. Starting with you, Cenk, what are your thoughts so far?
So there's two different elements to the story, right? There's the sexual harassment and abuse, etc. And then there's the stuff related to Trump that's political. So on the sexual harassment, etc., it looks like they're claiming they have tape after tape after tape, right? So I'd be super surprised if those lawyers were completely making it up out of whole cloth. So, and they're very clear on what they don't have tapes on. And the lawyer went on O'Donnell and explained the distinction. So the ones that they claim they have tapes on are very, very likely true, okay? And so that's all the sexual stuff that you're hearing. Is any of it surprising? No, of course, Rudy's a monster. Anyone who doesn't realize Rudy's a monster is off their rocker, right? And so I believe I wanted you, since the day I interviewed you, is textbook sexual harassment. I mean, it doesn't get any more sexual harassment than that. I hired you to try to have sex with you, and then I coerced you into sex. I mean, it's textbook, right? So that's, that's one issue. But the more important issue for the country is whether the Trump stuff is true, right? And so that Trump would say that he was going to claim voter fraud if he lost no matter what. Least surprising news story in American history. We don't have to adjudicate it. That's so obvious, right? And the right wing's never going to believe that. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. That issue's settled in everyone's minds, right or wrong. Okay. The one that's of course super interesting is the pardon one, and I'll say right out of the gate, I don't know if it's true. They say they have a witness, but they don't have tapes, and the witness is deeply incentivized to not agree with Rudy Giuliani. So I don't know. We'll have to see what the evidence is.
So I want to go to the lawyer representing Noelle Dunphy in this next video, because Lawrence O'Donnell flat out asks about what type of corroborating evidence there is in regard to the claim that Rudy Giuliani and Donald Trump were selling pardons. Let's watch.
Repeatedly, you say in this complaint, this conversation was recorded, this statement was recorded. It doesn't say that when Giuliani's describing the way he's selling pardons for $2 million. Is there any recording about that?
There's not a recording about that we know of. We do expect that it will be corroborated in other ways.
How else could that be corroborated?
Well, the complaint alleges that somebody else was present during those discussions, Lev Parnas, and in part, we would like to talk to him about those conversations.
So is it fair when you read these 69 pages that every place where it says this statement was recorded, or anywhere it says this conversation was recorded, to interpret it as that's the recorded material? And wherever it doesn't say that, you can assume it's not recorded. That's the way I read it.
For the most part, but I would say that there are other recordings that were not referenced in the complaint that may become relevant at some time. The complaint is an outline of Ms. Dunphy's allegations. It's a very detailed outline, yes, but there may be other evidence that comes out as the case proceeds towards trial.
And so we're gonna get to the specific evidence they do have in just a moment. But Emma, Lev Parnas, the name rings a bell, and it does not, I don't associate that name with a lot of credibility, which makes me worry.
No, and those associations with Lev Parnas go way back. So, or at least with Trump, right? So there's probably stuff that we don't even know that has not yet been revealed about their communications and their relationship. But putting that aside for a second, what else they could potentially tap into here would be any paper trail, right? But we learned this through the Clarence Thomas story with Ginny Thomas and Kellyanne Conway being the bag woman for right-wing interests in that way. There's so much shady money and shady channels in right-wing spaces because of our insane campaign finance laws. We've just legalized corruption, so it's really difficult to trace that kind of stuff. But back to the sexual harassment allegations just for a second, and sexual abuse and violence potentially there. I mean, we've known that this guy is like a lecherous little goblin creep for a really long time. And I remember when the Borat 2 movie came out, remember that? And there was the footage of him, and he said he was just tucking his shirt in, and clearly he was trying, I think, allegedly at least, to start sexual contact with this woman.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
that he thought was 15.
yeah,
right?
well, and then Sacha Baron Cohen ran in and said, "Oh, she's too young for you. Or too old for you. She's 15 or whatever." But he later said that he felt scared for her in that moment, and he hadn't initially planned to go in and actually interrupt the what do you call the scene there? So the prank. So everyone's known this guy. He married his cousin, his second cousin. He's been a creep for a really long time.
Yeah, so look, on Lev Parnas, there's different kinds of guys who are not trustworthy. There's guys who just serial liars. Like if George Santos said anything, even if it looked like, oh my God, he's saying it against Trump, I wouldn't get excited about that. He's a serial liar. You don't want to get excited about things that aren't true, okay? Lev Parnas is in a different category. He's a normal crook, and he was a crook with Giuliani and Trump. But he had to suffer the legal consequences, and of course, since Trump and Rudy are among the elites, they didn't. So he's super bitter at them, right? But they were crooks together. So that leaves me, it's possible that Lev Parnas absolutely knew about pardons that they were selling because they were all in cahoots together, and he's now selling them out because he's pissed at them, right? It's also possible that he made that up because he's mad at them, right? So right now it's very hard to tell. But remember, it's not just Lev Parnas, it's also this woman here who now, like before I knew about the tapes, I was like, I don't know what's true or untrue. We don't know anything about her. And that's why we actually didn't cover the story yesterday. But now that we know there are tapes, apparently she's credible, right? So there's now two witnesses saying, yeah, we heard them saying that they're selling the pardons. By the way, there's a third possibility, which is that Rudy said that, but they weren't actually selling the pardons. He was like weirdly bragging or something, right? So all that is possible, but I'm sure that everybody will break into the camps of he definitely did it and he definitely didn't do it. Evidence be damned.
Right, so let's talk about the evidence, right? Because the word recordings comes up quite a bit if you're reading about this story, if you're watching any type of broadcast about this story. So let's start off with potential financial crimes / federal crimes having to do with tax evasion or tax fraud. Really interesting moment during the Lawrence O'Donnell show in that regard. So let's take a look at that.
As for the tax crime alleged in this lawsuit, it appears that defendant Giuliani has a very big problem. On page 22 of the complaint, it says, Giuliani told Ms. Dunphy that someone owed him $1 million, but Giuliani hinted that instead of having the money paid to him, he had his friend, Robert Strick, hold it for him. He said, Robert Strick just got me $1 million payment. This statement was recorded.
And Vanity Fair, by the way, is alleging that in many cases, Rudy Giuliani was privy to the fact that he was being recorded, which, look, Rudy Giuliani is out of his mind, okay? He's crazy. Yep. So it wouldn't shock me if he agreed to be recorded, even as he is saying terrible things, potentially implicating himself in criminality. So there's that angle regarding potential tax fraud. Then there's also the recordings, and it seems most of the evidence, like robust evidence in terms of the recordings, are in connection to the sexual harassment and sexual assault. So let's watch the next video because that's where you'll get the details in regard to what is recorded, allegedly, according to the lawsuit.
It appears on page 26 of the lawsuit complaint, just above the passage, that shows an actual text message from Rudolph Giuliani to Noelle Dunphy asking, can I shower with you? He was later recorded telling Ms. Dunphy, I've wanted you from the day I interviewed you. Page 26, on February 23rd, 2019, Giuliani told Ms. Dunphy that he could get in trouble with underage girls if they were 16 but looked 20. Or he could not get in trouble with underage girls if they were 16 or looked 20. This conversation was recorded. He told Ms. Dunphy, who is 43 years old, during a recorded conversation, I need time alone with my girlfriend, with my daughter, with my little girl. This became part of a pattern in which Giuliani referenced Ms. Dunphy as his daughter in the context of sexual activity and made her extremely uncomfortable. He told Ms. Dunphy that he had a certain sexual attraction to the 20-year-old employee, that he fantasized about her, and that he kissed that 20-year-old employee on the lips but did not consummate the relationship. He said that his attraction to his 20-year-old employee was different from his attraction to Mrs. Ryan or Ms. Dunphy, whom he said he just could not control himself around. This conversation was recorded.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it doesn't get any creepier than you remind me of my daughter and I'd like to have sex with you.
And in real life, he's estranged from his daughter, by the way.
Yeah. No, that is just, he's a disgusting, vile human being. And that conversation was recorded. Okay, so Rudy, look, on this alone, let alone all of his insane other things that he has done, is beyond done at this point. He's not Trump, he's not, he doesn't have Teflon, he doesn't have the same cult around him. He had Trump's protection and he had the aura of Trump around him. But you think Trump won't drop him like a bad habit? So it depends on how much crap Rudy has on Trump, etc. But I mean, he's forever will be known as a creepy, disgusting human being. So that's clear. But now I also want to, look, I'm trying to refrain super hard from calling people stupid, whether they're our opponents or sometimes Democratic leadership, which drives me crazy, right? But Rudy Giuliani is truly stupid, or his brain is completely decayed.
Well, it's all just a wash in brown liquor, as you also hear in these complaints.
Yeah, for sure, Emma, yeah. And so, but whatever is causing his complete lack of judgment, so all this stuff, forget all this stuff, he gave her access to 23,000 emails.
Oh
to all of his emails, He's like, I don't want to bother reading through them. Why don't you read through my emails that were.
There was privileged information in those emails because in those emails, he was acting as a lawyer for various people, including members of the Trump administration and Trump family.
So, Rudy, you idiot. You thought, hey, I'll take this woman who I'm going to sexually harass and then promise $1 million to, but never give the $1 million to. And then I will give her access to all of my records and all of my emails, including from top Trump officials. And I bet she won't record them, and I bet she won't use them against me as I continue to sexually harass her ad nauseum and never delivering on any of my promises. You really just can't get any dumber than that.
Or he's just incredibly arrogant and thought, I'm just so charming and handsome that she's gonna be won over by all of this. I mean, it's a disgusting story. I don't wanna make too much light of it. But back to what you said about promising her that $1 million. That's when we get to the pardon promising thing where there is some gray area, because this guy was just talking the big game a lot of the time. That would be a massive, massive implication for democracy. So it's good to hold off on that for right now, but it's not beyond the realm of possibility. This is the most self-dealing administration that we've ever seen in the history of the country.
1000%, I totally agree with that. And just to fill you guys all in on the promised salary component of it. So when he's hiring her, he says that he's gonna pay her $1 million. Remember, she worked for him for about 2 years. And the money never came, okay? So it was all too good to be true. According to Politico's reporting on this, it was an opportunity that was, quote, too good to pass up according to the filing. But the offers were a sham motivated by Giuliani's desire to pursue a sexual relationship with Dunphy. And the abuse began almost immediately, she alleges. So she said all she got from Giuliani were a few cash payments, totaling $12,000 to cover living expenses, and that he still owes her nearly $2 million, she said. And by the way, Dunphy's attorney, Justin Kelton, addresses the salary issue in this final clip. Let's take a quick look.
The lawsuit, to be clear, is about Rudolph Giuliani, as described, luring this woman, a woman he finds attractive, into working for him, promising her to pay her $1 million a year, which he can't pay her right now because he's trying to hide money from his wife while he's in divorce proceedings. And if she just waits until the divorce is over, which is way more than the year in this story that is told, then she'll be paid retroactively all the money she's owed.
Exactly.
According to the lawsuit, she was never paid anything.
Well, she received a few small payments in cash so that they wouldn't be traceable. And she alleges that some of her business expenses were reimbursed, not all, but some. But the vast majority of what she alleges was to be paid to her has never been paid.
And final thing I'll say about this is, in addition to promising to pay her and just refusing to in the end, he also promised to provide legal assistance in like a court case involving a toxic ex-boyfriend. I don't know too many details about that, but there was that legal representation angle, there was the promised pay, and that unfortunately persuaded her to work with him, and then he allegedly abused her in multiple ways. Well, look, I don't know if this is controversial or not, but I have tremendous sympathy for her on what happened once she started working there. I don't have a lot of sympathy for, I started working for Rudy Giuliani in the year 2019 when everyone knew he was a despicable human being, on the hopes that he'd pay me $1 million under the table. That I don't have a lot of sympathy for. I'm just being honest. No, I totally, I understand that perspective. Getting paid $1 million under the table, that's a big deal.
She was a sexual abuse victim.
Yep.
That's part of it as well. So she had a lot of trauma that she was working through. I'm sorry, I'm coughing in my upper lung right now. But yeah, that might have been part of it too. Yeah, and I get it. And that's why I'm not, the only thing that I am judging, if you will, is the decision to work for Rudy frickin' Giuliani in the first place. Right, and you're right. But at that point, we all knew what kind of person he was, you know? But at the end of the day, if these allegations are proven in court, she's the victim here. And for sure. 100%. And so I really do hope that justice is served. I hope there's a full-blown investigation. And to be quite honest with you, look, he might have been fibbing. I have no idea either. But I do think there should be a robust investigation into whether or not Rudy Giuliani and Donald Trump were selling pardons for $2 million apiece. 100%. Let me just be super clear about that. Look, the reason I even brought up her decision to work for him in the first place is, don't work for evil people and don't believe them. They're going to do the things that they look like they're going to do. Okay, so I said the same thing yesterday about Alyssa Farah Griffin and Stephanie Grisham and all those people who went and worked for Trump for 4 years, and then golly gee, I discovered he's a bad guy. Oh, right. Did you? Right. Did you? You just discovered that? I discovered he's a bad guy, and I felt the need to share that with everyone in the form of a book that I'm trying to sell. Exactly, and I didn't discover that during the election, when I could have actually told you that and it could have made a difference, because I wouldn't have discovered it if he had won. I would have just stayed in the administration. So, okay, but they're much worse than her. They're deeply involved politically in right-wing agenda, etc. So, but back to Anna's point, look, the sexual harassment stuff's all on Rudy. That's his problem. It's a personal thing. We all think he's the worst guy in the world anyway. And so I hope she gets justice on that. I hope she gets the 10 million and bankrupts his sorry, vile ass, okay? On the pardons, I agree 100% with Anna. As you can tell, we're not sold yet because there's not enough evidence, right? But there's certainly enough evidence, 2 witnesses, to merit a lot more investigation. So we're not like the Trump guys, oh, find me the votes, right? Find me the evidence. No, but if there is evidence, let's make sure that we're doing due diligence to locate it and not let it go just because Trump's a criminal, everybody knows he's a criminal, let's just move on, right? No, let's not move on. That is a very, very significant crime if true. I don't know that anything can ever move a Republican voter, but it doesn't matter. We still have to establish things that are true. All right, we're gonna take a brief break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about what's currently transpiring with some House Democrats who want to offer protection for a Republican, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. The story should enrage you, so come back for that. We'll see you in a few.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, and Emma with you guys. Also, Chris Birch, because he just gifted 10 Young Turks memberships, which is amazing. Thank you again, Chris. I love the community, looking out for one another. And speaking of that, I just gave someone on Twitch, if you're a member, the $100 Blue Apron gift card. Wanted to make sure you know how to get it. Go to rewards@tyt.com and they'll verify that you're a member. We give that for people making great comments, smart comments, funny comments. So thank you for participating in the show. We appreciate it. All right, Anna.
All right, we have pretty big news story about Lauren Boebert. Congresswoman Lauren Boebert has officially filed for divorce from her husband of nearly 2 decades. She wrote in a statement to the press, "It is with a heavy weight on my heart that I have filed for divorce from my husband. I am grateful for our years of marriage together and for our beautiful children, all of whom deserve privacy and love as we work through this process." I love how they use their children to ask for privacy, as if people are looking to dig up dirt about the kids. Like they want privacy.
Yeah,
so
that's
just
fine.
say you want privacy.
That's totally fine.
Yeah.
You don't need to throw your children needlessly into the fray.
Your kids don't need to be a shield.
Yeah, well, it makes them feel much more like morally or emotionally protected when they throw the kids out there.
Yeah, and look, I don't know about Republicans, but Democrats, and including Democrats we don't like, they never go after kids. They have other problems, but that is not among them.
Right.
I don't think I've ever seen a Democratic official or pundit go after somebody's kids gratuitously for no reason. And in the middle of a divorce, what are they gonna do? Blame the kids?
Right.
That makes no sense at all. I don't know if she's telling it to her fellow Republicans who are obsessed with bringing kids into the equation. But either way, nobody cares about that. Stop using your kids as a shield in a super callous and disgusting way. It reminds me of what Steven Crowder did. Like, it's not me, it's all my kids. Who's coming after your kids? Stop making crap up.
Exactly.
Now, with that said, I do blame the kids though.
Well, I mean,
see, but look at how funny that is. Who the hell would do that? Right?
Disagreements about child rearing do usually lead
But
to
it's not the
marital-
kids' fault.
I know it's not the kids' fault in this case. And by the way, their kids are pretty grown. Like they've been together for nearly 20 years. One of her children, or one of their children, I should say, is 18 and is expecting his first kid. Anyway, let's put the kids aside for a second and move on. She also says, "I've always been faithful in my marriage, and I believe strongly in marriage, which makes this announcement that much more difficult." So let's talk a little bit about Jason Boebert and his reaction to the divorce filing, because he seems to have been caught off guard by it. He did not expect it, and his reaction to it was, well, let's just get to the details. So the divorce petition claiming the Boeberts' marriage is irretrievably broken, was filed on April 23rd in Mesa County Court, according to documents reviewed Tuesday by the Colorado Sun. Additional documents, including a request by Boebert that she be granted child support, given parental decision-making power for their children. That she also wanted that. Were filed on May 11th. Now, an affidavit of service was also obtained by the Daily Beast, and it indicated that Jason Boebert appeared to be caught off guard by the court proceedings. He chased away a process server with an expletive-laden tirade and let his dogs loose when he was served with the divorce papers, the affidavit said. In fact, the process server was quoted as saying this: "Once he learned that he was being served with dissolution of marriage papers, he was extremely angry," the process server wrote. "I tried to hand him the documents but did not take them," meaning he did not take them. "He started yelling and using profanities and told me that I was trespassing and that he was calling the sheriff's office. I told him I was leaving the documents on the chair outside the door. He closed the door, then let the dogs out." By the way, the document also noted that Jason was cleaning a gun and drinking a tall glass of beer when he was served. Classy guy.
Stereotype.
Yeah, but I will tell you, at least we've now found out who let the dogs out. You knew I had to say it.
No, you didn't though.
I did though.
He didn't need to say it.
Okay, so now, look, guys, I don't agree with Lauren Boebert. She says, I strongly agree with marriage. First of all, I don't even know what that means. How do you agree with marriage? Look, I think people get married, people get divorced. I don't think it's a big deal. And I know that everybody says, no, it's like the worst thing in the world. Well, it depends. Sometimes it is because it gets really ugly and the kids get caught in between, right? And sometimes it's fine. But I'm not here to judge anyone's divorce or marriage. Who cares, right? But these guys always say stupid things like, "Oh, I'm a big believer in marriage." Now here's your goddamn papers. Get the hell out of here, right? And then Marjorie Taylor Greene ran away with a tantric sex guru and then judges everyone else's life, okay?
Right, calls innocent teachers groomers.
Exactly.
It's interesting you bring her up though, because these two women don't like each other. They could have solidarity with one another and be on the same side, like in the way that the Squad, it kind of does at least, but that's not in their nature because they're female misogynists. And they all have these incredibly stringent, to your point, Cenk, right-wing beliefs about what marriage should entail. And curiously, when the women in the relationship get a little bit of fame and a little bit of power, the marriage falls apart. I'm just pointing that out.
A little taste of freedom, right?
Yeah.
And one other thing I want to just quickly mention is the one statement that we have from Jason Boebert, as reported by the Daily Mail, but the Daily Mail is a tabloid. It's exactly the kind of story that they jump into. So here's what he told the Daily Mail, quote, "This makes me kind of sad, actually. I'm torn by this very sad thing, a horrible moment in my life. I love her too much to say anything bad about her. She is the mother of my children and my partner for the last 20 years. Please just let me have some peace."
That is actually, see, that's a statement that's so much more authentic than the one that Lauren Boebert wrote.
Yeah, I agree.
And it makes you kind of feel for him. But we have no idea what happened. We don't know if anybody cheated on anybody. We don't know what their differences were. It's obvious that Jason Boebert is very unhappy about the divorce, but we don't know if he caused it. So, and I don't want to know. I don't care about their personal lives.
Right.
Like all of this would be perfectly fine and not even noteworthy if Lauren Boebert were to say, "Hey, listen, I believe in family values and I believe in marriage, but sometimes it doesn't work out, and I'm not here to judge anyone else." Then I'd say, "Oh my God, just leave her alone. Leave her alone. Let them deal with their issues, right?" But no, they judge everyone else nonstop, right? Same thing with Crowder. He's like, "Oh, I can't believe we live in a no-fault divorce state, right?" And then she could just leave if she wants. What would you want to do? Kidnap her and put her in the basement?
Kind of.
Yeah. And so they have these insane, archaic views of marriage, in my opinion, right? And then they do the opposite, but they still want credit for but I want credit for being the greatest defender of marriage and family values of all time, even though, of course, I'm not going to abide by those principles. Then F off already and stop judging the rest of us.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the only thing that's noteworthy here is the whole rules for thee, but not for me mentality. Life is complicated. People grow, they change, they grow apart. It is what it is. So just stop being judgmental about other people.
Yeah.
And who they love, whether or not that relationship works out, it's really no one's business. But if you're gonna go around judging the lives of others, when your marriage falls apart, you become a target-rich environment. That's all I'm saying.
I just want to know what's going to happen to Shooter's Bar and Grill. That's the thing that I'm most worried about. I am worried that the people of Colorado won't be able to go to their restaurant and get food poisoning anymore. I mean, that is what they have provided for the world, and horrific right-wing politics. So c'est la vie, but maybe the legal battle over shooters. We shall see.
Yeah, I'm gonna add one last thing, generally about marriage and divorce. Look, do these guys live on the same planet as us? Because I have tons of friends who got divorced, okay? And both the husband and the wife are lovely people. They just got divorced for 100 different reasons, right? They couldn't get along, this happened, that happened, the other thing happened. Doesn't mean they're evil. It doesn't mean that the divorce is terrible and evil and immoral and they shouldn't do it. Can we just get past that already, for Christ's sake? That's just my general note.
All right, unfortunately we're out of time in this segment as well, but when we come back, we will give you an update on Biden's negotiations with Republicans on the debt ceiling. And if you are hearing from any Democrat that there are no negotiations, that Biden's playing hardball, just know that that is a lie. We'll give you the details when we come back.
If you don't like your kids that much, or if you don't like them at all, which happens on occasion, don't worry about it.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Uygur, and Kasparian, Emma Vigeland, also Michael Lee and MBH, they just became members, and American Heroes. Also Gail Hefner, who's even more of a hero for gifting 2 Young Turks memberships. We love you for that. Thank you. Casper.
Let's give you an update on the debt ceiling negotiations. In a particularly pathetic move, a group of House Democrats is hatching a plot to save House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, a Republican, if members of his own party revolt against him over striking a debt ceiling deal with President Joe Biden. Now, should the House GOP call for a vote of no confidence, some Democrats are planning to basically save the Republican House Speaker by blocking the vote altogether. So this is what Politico is reporting, and stick around for the final details to this story because it'll give you a sense of just how much President Joe Biden is willing to give up in spending in order to make Republicans happy. Let's also just keep in mind that no negotiations need to happen. Biden should be calling their bluff because there's no way in hell Congress is gonna fail to raise the debt ceiling that would collapse literally the world economy and their stock portfolios, which is about the only thing they care about. So this whole farce about how Democrats must negotiate is garbage, and it upsets me that we even have to have this conversation. But nonetheless, a small group of moderate Democratic lawmakers, according to Politico, has quietly reassured its House GOP counterparts that it can help protect McCarthy's gavel if his right flank revolts over a debt agreement, according to 2 people who are familiar with the discussions. If conservatives responded to a McCarthy-Biden deal by forcing a full House vote on ousting the California Republican, Democrats say they have enough members to help block it, keeping him in power. Cenk, why exactly would Democrats give a damn in regard to Speaker McCarthy being able to keep his gavel?
Yeah, so I need to break down the whole thing so you guys can understand why we're at this portion of the theater, right? It's Act 3 of this play, and it's all a play.
And it's Politico leak time.
Yeah, so number one, the debt ceiling is not a thing, right? So it's we have it. It does have to be re-upped. But whenever a Republican is president, including when Trump was just president, it's never an issue. It's because it's money we have already spent. It's not, are we going to spend more money, which is a real issue. That's a real debate. This is, we've already spent the money. Should we pay them, or should we just say we're bankrupt in America and no one should ever trust us again, and no one should use the dollar abroad, which would
global collapse.
Total global economic collapse. It's not hyperbole, okay?
Yeah.
So now, then the Republicans, when a Democrat is in office, goes, oh my God, we are so concerned about this. We don't want to pay our bills. We're deadbeats, right? And the Democrat what should the Democrat do? It's easy. The Democrat should say, no, I'm not negotiating with you at all. You never believed in this, and this is not a real thing. And you're not going to crash the stock market either, because all of your donors are even richer than my donors, right? So it is all a farce.
So true.
100% of it is fake, totally fake. Everyone who participates in the farce is guilty, okay? So even the reporters who are like, oh my God, it's a debt ceiling. What is Biden gonna do? How much of his programs can he hang on to? It's so easy. Biden could go like, ba-ding, get the hell out of here. Go ahead, crash the entire market. Go ahead, I dare you. You won't have a single donor left. I triple dare you, crash the entire market. Go ahead, Republicans. They would never do it. But Biden, it's not that Biden is weak though. This is the really important part. It's that Biden is a Republican.
1000%.
He's been a Republican his whole life. Every one of his policies is Republican. I don't mean on social issues. Yeah, they have the fake fights on the social issues. On economic issues, he has always been conservative. And Jayapal had a quote about, okay, sorry, we'll get to Jayapal in a second. But when you get to this stage in the debate, the Republicans go, we want everything. And Biden goes, oh golly gee, I guess I'm gonna have to give you 80% or so. And so that's where we are today. And that's why you're seeing this nonsense story about how the Democrats are saying, well, golly gee, we might have to help McCarthy because otherwise, I mean, what will we do with this debt ceiling thing? They're all liars. They all want to cut spending. They're all conservative.
Okay, so I'm actually gonna skip ahead. We're gonna go back to what Democrats are up to in helping McCarthy in just a moment. But I wanna be clear that this piece that we're referring to in Politico didn't actually get into the details about the ongoing negotiations between Biden and the Republicans at all. There was a separate Politico piece that did get into it to some extent and made it abundantly clear that Biden is lying to the American people when he claims that he's not negotiating the debt ceiling, right?
And we should just be clear, when I say Politico leaks, these are on purpose. Like that's when you, anything published in Politico at this time period in negotiations is for a strategic purpose.
Really? I thought they were all muckraking journalists who were out on the field gathering the news.
It's a glorified gossip rag.
Right, 100%. So let's go to graphic 9 here because as Politico reports, the White House continues to say these negotiations aren't on the debt ceiling, but on spending and budget with the debt ceiling sort of attached. As Politico reports, that appears to be a distinction without an actual difference. Concessions are being made. So the question is, what are the concessions? What is Biden willing to concede on? Well, here's what Biden wants, okay? He wants that the GOP drop its effort to roll back parts of Biden's key legislative accomplishments.
That's nothing, that's literally nothing.
Like the Inflation Reduction Act, as well as take student debt relief off the table.
I don't even know what that means, it's in the courts now.
To limit any spending caps to as little as 2 years, okay? So he's willing to agree to spending caps as long as they're as little as 2 years, okay? A debt ceiling extension of at least 2 years through the 2024 election because that would be politically advantageous for Biden as he's running for president.
Okay, understand that Democrats are getting absolutely nothing from that. Like they just listed that as if it's a number of things. All Biden is saying is please stop attacking me for a short period of time on a couple of issues.
Right.
He's not getting any actual concession.
Yep.
He did, like, what are the Democrats getting more Medicaid spending? Are they getting? They're getting nothing, nothing. And everybody in Washington is a bunch of goddamn liars going, "Oh man, Biden, what a tough negotiator." Shut up.
Well, I mean, what they're getting and what they think they're getting is that this fight will be over and it won't hurt Biden politically. There's no American on earth that a regular voter that cares about this at all. It's just Senate congeniality brain.
So finally, here's where Biden is willing to concede to Republican demands. And this is where everyone who identifies as a Democratic voter, as a progressive, if you vote for Democrats, you should be enraged by this because A, they've been lying to you about like, oh, we're not gonna negotiate with Republicans. And then at the same time, behind the scenes, Homeboy's getting ready to cut spending on incredibly important social spending programs. Now, Politico doesn't specify exactly what those programs are, but here's what they do report. So Biden is willing to, concede on accepting discretionary spending caps through the remainder of his term.
So that means he will not spend any more money on you, the average American, from here on out. He didn't plan to anyway. So this is very convenient for him to do goddamn nothing, which is exactly what he wanted.
Well, they won't be able to because of the Republicans in the House. That's what he's thinking, right?
Yeah.
Well,
he didn't intend to fight for anything
look, I don't know what
he didn't even do it when Democrats had like majorities. You know,
I don't know if we disagree on this, but Biden never intended to do any extra programs. Never. He's a full-blown conservative Republican on economic issues.
So also, clawing back billions of dollars in pandemic aid, once seen as critical to the agenda.
So remember how he took all that credit for COVID relief, and that was actually a good bill, right? And we were psyched about that bill. Now he's like, oh yeah, all the good stuff in there, whatever is left, we're taking it back. We're taking it back. Yeah, because take the one thing that was successful, they got you above 50% approval ratings, and now destroy it because anyway.
And possible restrictions on certain safety net programs for the poor.
Well, that's the thing that.
That's the number one thing that infuriates me.
So I mean, we probably do have a bit of a disagreement in that I think he has more Senate brain than Republican brain. But the COVID relief money is probably the first thing that he's going to give up if this actually comes to pass. If they actually cave on the debt ceiling for work requirements for SNAP and things like that for the neediest families, I mean, it's nuclear time because
not.
I mean, no, for us, we've got to call that out in that way because luckily Fetterman has said publicly that he'll sink the bill. It seems like if they actually put that kind of stuff in there, and I would imagine Bernie's on that same on that same train. There should be none of this. There should be none of this. Biden could just invoke the 14th Amendment and just say this has to do with the national debt and our ability to pay our bills. It's national security, and bing, bang, boom, we're over with this stuff. Why? The reason that there are certain Democrats like Mark Warner, like Joe Manchin, like Sinema, well, whatever she is now, but that want mechanisms like the debt ceiling and the filibuster in place because they prevent direct democracy in this country. And so there is quietly, I think, some Democrats behind the scenes, especially in the Senate, who have not been vocal on this at all. It's only been in the House, who like that kind of stuff.
I totally disagree. I think they're all frauds. And not Bernie, not Fetterman, but let me explain. So I write it down in stone. So if I'm wrong, come back and say, haha, Cenk, look at this video. I'll look at how wrong you were, okay? Joe Biden will definitely offer to do exactly what we just talked about here and make work requirements. The Democrats, a couple of them will huff and puff, and some of them will mean it like Bernie, some of them won't mean it like Jayapal, okay? And they'll go, oh, progressives, oh no, this is a line in the sand. And then that line in the sand will be easily crossed, super easily crossed. Why? Because they don't need Fetterman or Bernie. They don't need Jayapal. They don't need the Progressive Caucus. They could put Republicans and Democrats together, which they will, and they'll easily pass these work requirements. And then, no, Emma, nothing will happen. Nothing will happen, and everyone will then say, "Oh, it was always going to be like this." No, it's historic. It's wonderful. It's bipartisan compromise.
No.
Oh, you guys are asking for too much. You guys are also unreasonable.
I don't think that the work requirements will make it in there, but I do think the COVID relief money will be in there. That's my prediction.
So,
okay.
Just a bit of hold on, just a bit of historical context, because wherever you land on this minor debate should give you, you should have a sense of who Biden really is and how he has negotiated the debt ceiling in the past, especially when he was the vice president under the Obama administration. So when the debt ceiling debate came up and it was real hot around 2012, I believe, basically Biden was negotiating with Republicans and he was ready to give up Social Security. He's like, yeah, Social Security cuts, right? He was the one who wanted to sign on to that. He was the one who was bringing Republicans in with that concession. So the idea that he's willing to cut, that's the third rail, Social Security, Medicare, third rail issues because of their universality and how popular they are. But Biden was still willing to concede on that.
Not
back
now,
in 2012. Not now.
No,
mostly because hold on. Not now. Mostly because of what happened during the State of the Union. It'd be super weird for him to renege after he called out Republicans during the State of the Union. But with that said, look, Social Security is an incredibly important and popular program. Right now, as we're dealing with extreme poverty in the country, as we're dealing with people who are mentally ill, out on the streets without the treatment and the care they need. The thought of cutting any type of spending that's meant to help the poor is insane.
He'll definitely do it. He'll definitely do it. Here's why I say that. And Emma, look, I hear you, but so he's not in favor of Social Security cuts now. Why? Because it's politically inconvenient.
He
was in favor of it half a dozen times all throughout his career. If he thought it was politically expedient, he would cut the living crap out of Social Security. He's wanted to do it throughout his entire career. But here I can prove it 100% about, generally speaking, about who Joe Biden is, okay? So when they were renegotiating the debt ceiling when he was vice president, he's in charge of it. That's what Anna just referred to. He cut a deal with Mitch McConnell that was so bad that even the other corporate Democrats were livid over it. Even Michael Bennett wrote a book saying, God damn this deal, okay? You know what it did? It did what Bush and the Republicans couldn't possibly do. They did this bill where they cut the crap out of taxes for the rich. It was about 3 times the size of the tax cuts of the Trump tax cuts, okay? But they couldn't make them permanent. Biden made them permanent. Over 90% of it all going to the rich. Because Biden is a Republican. He couldn't wait to give the rich that giant gift. So he's gonna give them every gift and he's gonna take it from you. So let's see who's right and who's wrong. I guarantee you that he fights like hell to put work requirements in there. It would be a minor miracle if Democrats in Congress stopped Biden from including work requirements, but I don't believe they will because I don't think 90% of them care either.
Yeah, look, you're 100% right on the previous negotiations and the scenario that you set up. He was only saved by the extremism of the Freedom Caucus and the Republicans. We would have had a lot of those things implemented, including privatization measures for Social Security and Medicare. Thank God that didn't happen. I don't really care though who Biden is at this point. I care what incentives he's responding to, and those 10 years ago versus now, very different political time. And I think that him coming out there in the State of the Union, locking Republicans into not cutting Social Security and Medicare is a slight improvement for the party. And I think that they need to understand at this point, I'm hopeful that they do. I understand though that they probably aren't, that the Republicans have zero leverage. They have zero leverage. They're saying we might crash the economy over work requirements for SNAP. Are you effing kidding me? No regular American is gonna look at that and say, I'm on the side of that party. And right now Republicans are struggling. They have a figurehead at the head of the party who is under active investigation, is wildly unpopular with independents and Democrats, and all they can talk about is trans people, right? So use that leverage to your advantage. I'm skeptical that Biden will do it to the way that we want, but I think it's an improvement on what we saw 10 years ago.
That is the lowest bar in human history, Emma. I agree with you. It's I don't think he's going to cut Social Security. Yeah, he's not going to cut Social Security or Medicare. But Jesus Christ, that's the bar we have for this goddamn Republican who's claiming to be a Democrat as president. So all farce, all farce. They're definitely going to do work requirements. And then everyone will pretend to be outraged, but no one will actually be outraged.
Look, I mean, I think, number one, it's so shady that he's lying to Democratic voters about negotiations taking place in the first place. Like, pretending as if he's not, no, I'm not negotiating. Like, why? Why are you lying when behind the scenes you're meeting with McCarthy in the White House to, pick and choose which social spending programs are gonna get cut?
Because he has Senate brain. I mean, that's who he is. He's a creature of Washington in that way.
Look,
they think they can do it in smoke-filled rooms, and he believes that he can build a consensus and blah. I mean, it's
but we don't need a freaking consensus. Like,
I agree.
We don't. Okay,
I agree.
Call their bluff. Okay, so finally, since Cenk mentioned it, I do have to give you the statement from Pramila Jayapal, who's supposed to be the head of the Progressive Caucus, right? And she's responding to questions about this plot to protect McCarthy should Republicans, rebel against him if he strikes a deal with Biden. This is what she says. That's so far down the line right now in terms of what might actually happen. At the end of the day, the solution is probably going to come from the Senate when we get really close to defaulting. And then she says, she added of McCarthy, I'm not sure who else could run that conference.
Who cares?
It's such a weird statement and concern, I gotta be honest.
She's had a rough tenure so far as the head of the Progressive Caucus.
Like look guys, I used to be a Republican in the 80s and 90s. And I think that the Progressive Caucus is to the right of where I used to be when I was a Republican. Economically, not socially at all. Economically, because their leader is Jayapal, who's like, I don't know, I'll just trust Biden, I'll do everything Biden says. And then she says, on this one, man, if he does the work requirements, we will be really mad. Oh yeah, what will you do about it? Will you organize a winning coalition to defeat Biden's so-called compromise with the Republicans? No, you won't. You won't do any of that, you will bow your head. So it hasn't happened yet. Prove me wrong, but you won't.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think that Jayapal in particular, and I would also say Bernie Sanders, right now, they're clearly being led into the room by Biden. And that's why they're treating him with kids' gloves. We'll see if that pays off for them. And
it won't, it already hasn't. It's already over. Biden is, we just showed you, Biden is literally gonna do nothing going forward.
Okay, let's relax. It's not over, but this is what is happening.
No, what I mean by, no, let me be specific. Emma is saying Bernie and Jayapal have this strategy, which I think is brain rot, that they're gonna, by being let into the room with Biden, they are gonna get something. But we just showed you, Biden has promised, I swear to God, I won't do anything for the rest of my term. So what are you gonna get? And I love Bernie, but Bernie, who gives a goddamn that Biden's your friend? Who cares? He's giving you nothing. And he's promising right here that he loves Republicans and will give you nothing. He'll give them everything. And Jayapal's hopeless, completely and utterly hopeless. I don't even want to discuss her.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back for the second hour of the show, we will switch gears and talk about something completely different. I'll tell you what it is when we come back.
Thanks
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk, and I'll see you soon.